Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining me again on our mental health live stream, where we normalize conversations about mental illness and mental health so that people can talk about what's on their mind instead of keeping it in and letting it bleed all over the place and bleed all over your relationships. My name is Dr. Stephen Walker. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I'm on every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 9 p.m. Mountain Time. Tonight, we have a really, really special guest. We have Candice, who she and I have done some pretty extensive work on some emotional wounds she has from the past, some pretty significant sexual abuse that she has found a way to heal and talk out so that she can find some relief from it. So Candice is going to come on. And one of the main reasons Candice wants to come on and talk about it is because she's really proud of the fact that she's been able to get herself to a place where she's not ashamed of what she's gone through, what she's been through. There's a prevailing sentiment in our culture that you shouldn't talk about what's on your mind. You shouldn't talk about your emotional wounds. You shouldn't talk about how you're feeling, what you've been through. You should keep that to yourself. And what Candice is going to come on tonight to talk about. We're not going to get into too many of the specifics about what she's been through. We're going to kind of hit that sort of as a broad-based idea. But again, remember, guys, you have to engage with us. This is not only about us talking. This is about you talking about your pain, what you're going through. You can always take me in a different direction later on after we've gotten the bulk of the interview done with. If you're going through some things, we're heading into, the holidays, and we've got a pandemic, political instability, and all kinds of stuff affecting everybody. We're isolated. A lot of people can't go home to their family. So if you're struggling, if there's anything you need some time to vent or talk about, feel free to ask a question. So again, tonight's topic is how to heal emotional wounds. A lot of people don't even know that emotional wounds can heal. A lot of people just have this idea that, oh, well, I am who I am, and people don't change, and nothing's ever going to help. And I'm just going to suffer in silence because what I've gone through has left me broken and battered, and there's nothing I can do about it. Couldn't be further from the truth, guys. Okay. And Candice is going to come on and talk about that so that you guys can understand that whatever you've gone through, you need to work on. And the best way to work on it is to talk it out. Find a place where you can talk about what's on your mind so that you can vent that, process that, get feedback, and work it through so you can go from post-traumatic stress disorder, which is on one side of the spectrum with trauma, to the other side of the spectrum, which is post-traumatic growth. Hey, Melissa, how are you? Lots of seasonal depression this year, absolutely. And we're going to talk more about that. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Candice in now. And again, remember, anybody can ask a question. If you have a comment, please feel free to ask that, okay? Let's bring her in. Whoop, sorry. Hey, Candice, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yep. How are things in Florida?
They're still kind of hot, actually, and humid, but, it's getting better.
Nice.
Down.
Well, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that you're able to get yourself to a place where you feel good about sharing what you've been through. So why don't we just jump in? Let's talk a little bit about, what emotional wounds you had, where you're at, and then we'll kind of see where things are going. So you and I did an extensive amount of work together. And why don't we talk a little bit? You go into whatever details you're comfortable with, and then we'll see how things go.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's very easy to say that when I first came to you, I thought I was broken, could never be fixed. I would always be that same person, and there was no way to fix me. And you kept telling me, incessantly that that's not the case. Just keep working on it, keep sticking with it. And that actually became the truth. Between the PTSD, the nightmares that I still have, the fallout from the abuse that was still following me for years and years, that I honestly had no idea was actually fallout. I just thought I was not a good person, or that I didn't have discipline and couldn't control myself.
That's
And
an excellent point, because that's what trauma
Mhm.
will do.
Yeah.
Trauma will, unworked on trauma, unhealed emotional wounds will pump out, like a physical wound on your arm, will pump out false beliefs, like exactly like what you said.
Oh yeah. I mean, I thought I was broken. I thought that I deserved everything bad that was happening in my life.
It was all your fault.
Yeah, everything was my fault. I deserved it. And I began to accept that that was the norm. And so I was, I was basically victim blaming myself,
Mhm.
and, you know, and just kept piling on to the abuse and the unworked trauma on top of everything, you know, just basically adding to everything else.
When you say you were victim blaming yourself, what do you mean by that?
Well, like I said, I thought I deserved everything. I thought I had done something wrong. I thought that everything that was happening in my life bad uh, was the result of my choices, was the
Mhm.
result of me being a bad person. And that couldn't be farther from the truth.
Mhm.
That I've come to learn that that is the farthest thing from the truth. That what happened, nobody deserves. Um, and that I was abused by an abuser, and that the fallout from that, even for years later into my adult life, that it was all fallout from the trauma.
Mhm.
And for years, I thought that there was I guess, a expiration date
Mhm.
on, you know, how long it should bother me, or how long I was supposed to deal with things. And that was also, you know, fake news.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Like one of the things I remember from a lot of the work we did, and do you want me to give just a brief overview so the viewers can
We can. Mhm.
without going into or do you want to do that?
I mean, I trust you to
Okay.
yeah.
So Candice was in a situation in her teen years where a family member was routinely sexually abusing her. And then that abuser was manipulating her mind in multiple different ways to make her believe that the abuse was her fault, or that or that he was actually helping her in a way.
Mhm.
So without going into all the specifics of that, Candice, why don't we talk a little bit about what you learned about your own value from the abuser that
I
we
had
have, that, you know, that you have subsequently overcome?
Yeah, I had no value,
Mm,
other than to be a kicking post or a punching bag.
mm, mm,
Everything, according to my abuser, everything around me that was not perfect, any excuse that could be found to be wrong was always my fault. Um, and I took that into, even once I left the environment, I took that into my adult life and applied and believed that for years. And I mean, I'll be
mm.
honest. I mean, you can obviously tell by the gray. I'm 48 years old, and I'm just now getting to the point, within probably the past year and a half, um, that I'm realizing that was not the case. That's not the truth. And none of it was my fault, and nothing is deserved.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
What would you say to victims out there who believe, because and we're getting some great comments here. I'm going to run through them once we go a
Mhm.
little deeper here. But what would you say to somebody out there watching this either live or who after we upload it, who hasn't done the work, who believes, and Christina saying gaslighting, exactly,
Mhm.
who believes the idea that you should have stopped the abuse? You should have said it's your fault. If you had said something, none of this would have happened to you. I know, right? Right? Yeah,
Right.
because you're You're remembering some of our work, right?
Yeah, I mean, I
What would
said
you say
that
to them?
that was part of my victim blaming on
Mm,
myself, was that's why I thought I deserved it. That's why I thought it was my fault, because I didn't stand up for myself, because I didn't speak out, because I didn't stop the abuse. Um, and he would also use that against me,
mm,
um, as a shaming point.
mm,
He would also turn it around on me and say, because I wasn't speaking out and standing up for myself, that obviously I was there for a reason.
mm.
And that was also not the case. And
Convincing you almost that you enjoyed it, that you liked it,
yes,
that you wanted it to happen.
mhm.
And
Secretly,
we
yes,
exactly.
secretly I was in love with him, and secretly, you know, it was, you know, I really wanted to be there. And
Hmm.
that was never the case, and obviously not the truth. But once I did leave the environment, I still took those thoughts with me, because I would blame myself for not stopping the abuse. I would blame
Mm,
myself for not standing up for myself. And I was still ashamed of everything that happened to me. And that's why I didn't say anything, because it was such a shameful thing. And I was
mm,
afraid of other people thinking those exact same things about me. So if I told them what had happened, you know, I expected their first question or their first thought to be, well, what did you do? And why didn't you say anything? You know?
mm.
And so,
And let's talk a little bit about
mhm,
that without obviously getting too specific here. But
mhm.
why doesn't a victim say anything? Why doesn't a victim of abuse, when the abuse is happening, say anything? What prevents them
Fear,
from doing that?
fear,
Fear?
shame. Um, oh, there's so many, so many words.
Sure.
Yeah, just the manipulation that I was subject to.
Hmm.
Um, he would he would tell me, if you do say things, if you do try to turn this on, you know, come out and stop this, if you tell people, I'll tell them this about you. I'll make it
Mm,
look like you came on to me.
mm,
You know, it, and for my situation, a lot of it was just the shame in it, because I didn't want people to think that about me. I didn't want people to think that I was a whore, or
mm,
that I was a loose person, or that I was a bad person. And I was afraid that my family, my extended family, would disown me, basically,
mm.
you know? And it just, there were so many things that went into it that I realize now, that it made it so hard. And plus, when you're young like that, even though I was a teenager, it's
Mhm,
still, well, if I do come out with it, what am I going to do then? Where am I going to
mm,
go? What am I going to,
mm.
how am I going to live? You know, and it's,
How bad is it going to be when
yeah,
he gets arrested or somebody, and then he comes back into the house? Then what?
exactly. And he would also, you know, he would threaten me.
Mm,
He would make different types of threats. If I had a boyfriend at the time, he would threaten things against them. You know, he would threaten other family members, you know, not physically threat, you know, not as a physical threat, but he had me convinced that he could make things happen,
mm.
you know, and things like that. So a lot of it was, for me, fear and shame, and
Sure.
being afraid that everybody else would leave me, just like he said they would.
And as I'm recalling all the work we've done, I'm remembering, a lot of people think that when you do this kind of work, there's one aha moment and then boom, you're cured. But it's, as you know, and Melissa's asking some really good questions. Melissa, I'm going
Mhm,
to get to those in a sec. But
mhm,
one of the aha moments I remember that we hit on was when you began to realize that you were treating yourself the way he was treating you.
Exactly the way he was treating me. I was projecting the same things on myself that he would tell me. But he would always tell me all the time I was stupid, that I would never amount to anything without his help to become a great adult. He would say that I can't do this, or I was too stupid to do, simple things around the house, because it was never perfect. It was never good enough. But in reality, he was finding things to justify his abuse. He was finding things wrong to justify his actions. And now that I can see it for, what it is, I understand more. I understand now for sure that it had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with him and his power that he needed to have.
And that power that he needed to have over you was something that you, and again, I'm remembering another one of kind of those aha moments when you began to realize that you telling yourself, I should have gotten out of this, I should have told somebody, was Candice's adult mind looking back on the child's mind. The child's mind doesn't think that. The victim's mind doesn't think that. The victim's mind doesn't think, oh yeah, I have the power to do. What did Candice's teenage brain tell her?
The teenage brain said, he's right. How hard is it to actually mop the floor? Why can't I get it? Why can't I get it? Why can't I do it right? What's wrong with me? And what am I doing wrong that makes him think I want this? What am I doing that makes him think these things? Yeah. So I blamed myself when I lived there. I believed everything he said, and I took all that in and continued the abuse in my head, basically.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Let's hit the pause button for a second. So Melissa and Christine are asking some good questions. So Melissa is asking, did this type of manipulation leave you seeking the same familiar situation in other relationships as you grew? What are your thoughts about that?
Yes and no. After I left the house, the boyfriend that I moved in with was basically a white knight in the beginning. He rescued me, and in my eyes became a god. And he was just as manipulative and abusive verbally as my abuser was. And it took me a long time to realize that. And I was able to get away. And, I was able to get out of that situation. So I think maybe that kind of played into the first real relationship after leaving. The second relationship, which is with my current husband, I've been married, it'll be 23 years in January. Complete opposite, best man I've ever met in my life. Knew within 3 months I wanted to marry him. And we've been married for 23 years. And, I think some of the lessons followed me, and I was able to see the good and see the bad. So, kind of yes and no on that situation. So.
Okay, great. And let's get to Christine's. And Christine's questions is a little further ahead than I want to get to, but that's fine. We can circle back. So Christine is asking, and how are you now? Do you reflect more on the sadness of this or the empowerment you have gained from it? It's better to be mad than sad. That's a good way to put it. Stay strong. What are your thoughts? How are you now? Do you reflect more on the sadness of this empowerment or the empowerment you've gained from it?
For a long time, I reflected on the sadness. I will say that the sadness was with me for a really long time, and it's probably only recent, probably last year and a half, that the empowerment is really beginning to settle in and stick. And I'm focusing more on that. I'm focusing more on what I have accomplished. I'm focusing more on self-awareness and not, I'm trying to find the words, not victim blaming, not shaming myself, not blaming myself, and not going into the spirals, you know, because if you focus on the sadness long enough, I've learned that you can really spiral yourself.
Sure.
And
especially if you don't have somebody or some situation where you can vent that, where you can process that, because you're right, that negative emotion, if there's no outlet for it, will begin making you feel like there's no hope.
It's over, it's done. Yeah.
I'm never gonna feel better, and that's,
I'm broken. Yeah. Yeah. It's I will admit that there are some days where it's harder to get away from the sadness.
Sure.
But I have accepted that the sadness will always be with me.
The ebb and flow.
Yeah, exactly. That there is an ebb and flow, and that it's okay to have the ebb and flow. And
the ebb and flow, that positive and negative, is part of how you build a muscle.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
It's just like doing a curl. You know, I think people have this idea that once you know, and people have seen my live streams before, know how I rail against this whole let it go culture, you know, the let it go, oh, just let it go.
And it's like magic proof.
Exactly. And then boom, I was watching something on CNN the other day about, there was some, I mean, I know he's trying to help people. Thanks, Ashley.
Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah, exactly. But his idea was we do this physical exercise with these traumatized kids, and then that helps them let go of their trauma. And I'm like,
you still remember. Yeah,
exactly. So part of what I'm trying to convey to people is like what Candice just said. Even though you've done the work never ends. It's like building a muscle. You can get to a point where you're like, oh, okay, cool. This is good. Or you can keep going. So Candice, talk a little bit about just to follow up on Christine's questions. How are you now, specific to, since we're going there, we can go there now, but what unhealthy compensatory behaviors did you do prior to doing a lot of the extensive work? Let's talk a little bit about how it manifested itself in the future, in the present.
Wow. Yeah. Full disclosure, I'm not proud of my behavior.
But I'm not ashamed of it either, because I've learned it was a symptom of trauma.
Exactly. It's fallout. But I have learned that it was fallout, and it was not because I was a bad person.
Great.
And you know, it can manifest in a bunch of different ways. For me, for a long time, was eating. The binging I had a problem with, and through work, I learned that the eating was also kind of a defense mechanism. If I don't like what I see, then nobody else will, and I don't have to worry about things, basically. But the major compensation that I had was shopping. Shopping was heaven, and still is heaven for me. I mean, I could, Black Friday is my jam. I hear angels singing, you know, and it's,
and you say that lightly, but think about where you were and where you are now. Let's talk about that other room a little bit.
Yeah, the
other
room. Yeah, the room where I would hide stuff. I would hide things in my trunk and wait till my husband went to bed. to go get them out of the trunk. Then it turned into buying smaller things so that it was easier to work in around the house.
How much do you wish you could still be in that place of being afraid of your husband finding out about all of this? Because what people don't realize is for many years, her husband was completely unaware of this. And we had multiple sessions leading up to that point where Candice would, I'm not saying anything. You can say whatever you want, dude. I am not. But talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's not happening. Yeah. I was going to go to the grave with that information if I had had my choice. I mean, I will be completely honest. At one point, I racked up almost $50,000 in debt. And it came close to destroying my marriage, more because of the lying and the deceiving that I was doing to hide my problem. And it was embarrassing for me.
Sure.
It was embarrassing to have to tell my husband that I can't control myself. It was embarrassing that I still needed to do this. Even I would be telling myself the entire time while I'm hitting add to cart that this is a bad thing to do, but look, it's on sale. This is, I don't need this, but I don't have that color, I could justify anything in my head to make it work. And then all of a sudden, I don't want to, no, all of a sudden is not a good expression because that's not true. It took probably 3, maybe 4 years to get to that point. It wasn't quick by any means. As far as I just went out one day and racked up the debt. But in the grand scheme of things, I mean, that's a really nice car. That's a really nice down payment on a house. And it was all because of fallout from the trauma.
Right. And let's talk about that real quick. So Melissa's asking, how did your husband handle that when the information came out?
My husband is the saintest of all saints.
Well, one of the things we worked on too was remembering what you bring to the relationship, why he treats you that way, why he's a saint. So we want to remember that he's a saint because of what you bring to him.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we have an exceptional relationship, mainly due to the fact that he is willing to try to understand. He doesn't understand a lot of the things that I do because he's not had to deal with extreme trauma, but he is also, I was afraid that when I told him, he would leave me. I mean, I'll be completely honest.
Sure.
Because of the amount of debt, that's a lot. And because I lied so much. I mean, it was a lot of lying. And if he had left me, I wouldn't have blamed him at all. Because that is a lot to put up with. But I explained things to him. We worked through it together. We are still working on it together because I still have to face it every day that I have a problem and I need him to hold me accountable for it. We have made changes in our relationship to where we are both happier because of my shopping problem. And so he's willing to listen. He's willing to try to understand. And
Sure.
that is priceless to me.
Sure. Because as we remember, you know, for a lot of years, he was just like, I don't understand any of this. I don't. So
He
let's
thought it was
talk.
just an excuse. You know,
Exactly.
he thought I was just trying to justify my actions. And I kept telling him what I was learning in our sessions. And when I explained to him that it's the same as when a drug addict or an alcoholic does something that makes them feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Shopping made me feel good.
Good. And
Shopping
that
hit a note.
bingo,
Yeah.
bingo. And like Melissa's saying, the impulse control she's lacking could be from the trauma. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about how the shopping helped manage those those feelings, that echo of the trauma.
My main, I guess, hit from it, for lack of a better word, was control. Because for years, when I was at the house, and even after I left the situation, I still felt out of control. And when you are in my situation, when I am on the internet and I see things that I like, I am the one in control. I'm the one making decisions. Nobody can tell me nothing. You know, they can't tell me no. They don't, the the websites don't judge you. And the websites don't talk back. And then after you purchase something, you have something to look forward to, because especially if it's coming in the mail, then you get a tracking number, then you can track it. And then you can't wait till it gets here. And then you have the box to open. And I was always on the hunt for that one special item that was going to fix me. And it took me a long time to realize that I held that belief. I mean, even up till probably 6 months ago, I still internally believed that there was an actual item that I could buy on the internet that was going to fix me, that was going to make me not that little girl that had all the trauma. And it took me a long time to realize I held that belief. And then it took me a long time to dispel that belief. And so that's where my shopping came from, because I needed to project an image that was not the little white trash kid that got abused. And so
Excellent.
I needed all the stuff to project that image. And I was constantly looking for everything to be something different.
Exactly. Exactly. So let me just pivot for a second, because Fernando is asking a really good question too. And Mark is joining us. I've never seen him here before from Twitter. So, hey, Mark, how you doing? We're doing good. We're talking to Candice about how she has been able to work through a lot of her trauma from her past. So Fernando is asking, sorry you went through this. I went through abuse as a child too. Did your view, great question, of what is family change after this happened? Also, if I may ask, how did your family help you through this, if any? Great question. This is why I'm doing this live, guys, because you know, the input from the viewers is the key part of this, so that people can start engaging about whatever mental illness or mental health they have to work on, because we all have a degree of mental illness. We all do. So do you need me to repeat that question, or do you got it?
Yeah.
Do you have it?
If you see me every time I do this, it's because I'm trying to read, because I
Yeah, I feel you.
do that well now.
So Fernando's question from, okay, great.
Yeah. So what was his question again? Like,
Sure. So Fernando is saying about family. Did your view of what is family change after this happened? Also, how did your family help you through this, if any? The last part is, I think, a good one too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, my family, for better or worse, is always there for everybody, for each of our family members. You know, the loyalty that we have for each other is great. And I really should have, okay, sorry, I'm shitting on myself again. But I don't know how to say it otherwise.
That's okay. That's
I
okay.
should have kept it in mind that my
Sure.
family, I should have given them a better chance to help me. Instead, I basically did like what you say. I tried to tell the future. I tried to see the future. And I've never been right when I've tried to predict. And once it finally came out, my family was behind me 100%. They were there for me in ways I never expected. They were there for me and are still there for me to this day. I am very blessed with the family that I have.
Now you're talking about your immediate family, right?
Yes, okay. Yes. Aunts, uncles, yeah, immediate family, even extended family.
Sure.
I'm still having issues with certain members of my family, still working through these issues even 30 years later.
And those issues with the family are all your fault, right?
No, not at all. No, I've gotten to the point where I understand why things happened better now than I did, obviously, when I was there. And I know how I feel about those things. And I'm to the point now where with the family members that I'm having issues with, I don't know how to put this. I can take it. They can take me or they can leave me. But that's their choice. I have made my choice. I know my boundaries, and whatever choice they make is on them. It's not because of anything I did. It's the choices that they make and they made and are still making. And so I'm just, certain family members are still pretty tricky with me. But for the most part, my family is a great family, you know, and I'm blessed to have them, to have the family that I do.
Great. And just to close up on Fernando's question, did it change your view? Like when the trauma was happening, did it change your view of what family was?
You know, I don't know. I've never really thought about that aspect of it. I don't think it did, because that's not something that really stands out to me. Because my abuser married into the family. So nobody liked him anyway. But after the fact, really. So yeah, no, I don't think what happened to me really changed my view on family as a whole.
Right.
It just changed my view on individual people because of the choices and the things that they did following the abuse. And that, you know, for good and bad, you know, it went both ways. So I think it just changed my view on individuals and not the concept of family as, you know, as a whole. Because right now, my family that I have made with my husband, me, my husband, and you can see my beautiful daughter behind me in the picture. We have a great family. We're all very close, and we love each other unconditionally. So Yeah.
Great. So we're getting a question from YouTube. Adam is
Mhm.
asking how to break the emotional stuck feeling due to trauma. I felt he's catastrophizes a lot when he sits with that feeling. So that's exactly why I originally was talking to Candice about sharing her story, because Candice, let's talk a little bit about how catastrophizing affected you prior. So
Mhm.
Adam, prior to working on this, those thoughts and emotions are swirling around in your head because there's no release. So let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about how catastrophizing and how stuck you felt prior to really deep getting this work, doing this work.
Oh, I had the outlook on life. There was always a shoe waiting to fall on my head.
Mm, mm,
There was always somebody waiting to kick me. There was, doom and gloom. That was my outlook on life. I expected the worst so that I wouldn't be disappointed when the worst happened. So I have a bad habit of always trying to be completely prepared for a situation before I go into it.
mm.
Um,
Hypervigilance.
Hyper vigilance. And so I would try to predict the future,
Mm,
as Stephen always said, and I would always predict the worst outcome, the worst possible outcome in my head, and that's what I
mm,
would prepare for. Um, and little things would always become huge
mm,
in my mind when little
mhm.
things went wrong. Like,
And that's catastrophizing, right? That's
yeah,
because it's time to beat on Candice, because that's what Candice learned as a
oh,
kid.
I'm stupid. I can't get anything done right. You know, I should have been able to see that this was going to happen, and I should have cut it off in, at the pass, basically. And I should have known that I ugh, I'm getting, I should have known a lot of things according to my previous work self.
Mm.
I should be able to predict everything.
Perfectionism.
Have to be perfect, have
Mm.
to be not the person that got abused, have to be,
How I have to be the person who did not get abused. Wow.
yeah, 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 and little things like I'm at a loss for an example, but little things become such a big deal because it's just one more thing to add to the list of failures, the list of not getting everything done, the list of being wrong, the list of, you know, being an idiot. Whatever you call your list. I mean, catastrophizing just adds to the list,
Mm.
and I see Angie, yeah, saying I should have known, I should have known. It's, I've had, Stephen has said it, and I had another
That's
therapist.
Dr. Walker, please. No, I'm kidding.
Oh,
I'm
Dr.
joking.
Walker. I
Candice and
know.
we were just joking before. She knows my sense of humor.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
kidding.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But keep going with that. Keep going with that.
Um, and another therapist I worked with said that I should on myself all the time.
Yeah, that's
And
a
I
very
even,
famous thing in the field. Stop shooting on yourself.
yeah,
I should. Yep.
predicting the future. Predicting the future is not possible.
And the prediction of the future is coming out of that unworked on trauma that tells you what
Yeah.
tells you what about the future is going to be. Well, that didn't make any sense, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, no, no. Yeah. Um, it tells you that everything is going to be awful.
Hmm.
It's not going to be good. You
And
might
your ability to handle that is what?
crap. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to make it that much worse because you're meaning myself, going to make the situation worse because you didn't get it right to begin with. And then, you know, I myself not only would blame myself for the situation at hand, no matter what it was, no matter how much or how little I actually had to do with it. It could have been something that that would have no rhyme or reason as far as my involvement in it, but it was my fault. Everything in my mind was always my fault.
Hmm.
And, you know, yeah, the feeling of always waiting for the shoe to fall on your head,
Hmm.
and then blaming yourself for the shoe and not being able to stop it before it happened. Yeah, that's catastrophizing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it gets old, but unless you recognize it
And
for
work on it, right? Ed?
work on it, acknowledge it and work on it, it never goes away. And you have to be willing to acknowledge what it is and where it comes from in
Exactly.
order.
You got to feel it.
Yeah.
Like I always say on these live streams, you got to feel it to heal it. So Adam, what I would say to you, my brother, is clearly there's something happened to you in your past. And I don't know if you're still on. I hope you're on, or maybe you'll catch it later. But there's
Mhm.
obviously something in your past that you haven't worked through, brother. And you've got to accept that. You got to take massive doses of the It's Okay pill. What's
Yeah.
the It's Okay pill, Candice?
It's about as big as my finger, but yeah, no, it's okay if bad things happen.
Exactly.
It's okay if good things happen.
It's okay that I'm still affected by this. It's
Yeah.
okay that I'm down. It's okay. However I'm feeling is okay. So for Adam, Adam's got to say to himself, look, it's okay that I've got this trauma in me and I've got to work on it.
Mhm.
Because see, Adam, the problem when you said I feel catastrophizing when I sit with that feeling, the problem is when a human being hasn't done the work, they feel these painful feelings within them and they've got no way to deal with them.
And
So
then
they
that's all your
immediately,
fault. Yeah.
what's that?
And then you feel like that's all your fault too.
Bingo. And then because they feel that initial pain, they're like, oh, hell, I don't want to deal with this. So they
Oh,
avoid it
yeah.
and they avoid it and it
Mhm.
builds up and builds up. So Adam, thank you for your question, my brother. You got to work on whatever's causing those feelings. Okay.
Yeah,
So
you have to. Like you have to know that they're there and where they come from, and you have to know that it's okay to have them. You know, it's okay to feel bad. That
absolutely.
that was something I had a hard time with too, because feeling bad was, I mean, obviously it's not pleasant and nobody
Sure.
wants to, but it's a part of it. And
And there's a therapeutic way that you can feel the bad feelings in
mhm,
in an exposure therapeutic setting to help you get used to them so you can start working through them. And Mark is making a good comment from Twitter. He's saying, I wish my family were close to me. They're having a good life while I suffer and be upset. Well, Mark, my brother, exactly the same thing I'd say to Adam. Clearly there's something going on in you that you're not working on, brother. You've got to work on whatever is making you suffer and be upset. And one of the things about men are notoriously worse than women, is we don't like to admit we're upset. We
right.
don't like to admit we're suffering because we're constantly bombarded with comments from our friends and people. Come on, man, dude, man up. What are you? You're being a little wuss. So Mark, my coaching to you, or my advice to you is, you got to make whatever you're suffering about okay in you. You got to say to yourself, it's okay that I'm feeling this. It's okay that I'm upset. And if they're family members that you're upset with, find a way to talk to them. Hire somebody in the field to mediate it and work some of it through.
Hmm. And give your family a chance. I mean, give them a chance to step up, to do the right thing, to admit, if they have wrongs to admit, and not knowing your situation, but give them a chance. You never know what the outcome. I can personally testify that you never know what the outcome is going to be. Even though you think you know what it's going to be, you really don't. And
Exactly.
with technology right now and Zoom and things like that, even though they're not physically close to you, you can still be close to your family.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And just to let everyone know, Candice is going to come back on again because this isn't just a one and done. We're getting some great feedback, but I want to touch real quick as we're coming up on the end here. And Rose, thank you for your comments before. Rose has been a long time viewer here. Angie is saying, let me see here. I think it's always my fault as well. I have a friend who always tells me you don't have that much power, that everything is your fault. Great advice. Then I feel like that's my fault too for being so stupid that I think that way. So talk about that, Candice.
Yeah, I mean, it's just basically a big dog pile is what it amounts to. I don't know if you, or some people call them pig piles, but basically it's like, it's the best way to explain it is a football game. Even though I hate football, this is the best way to explain it.
Oh, come on. Notre Dame. What are you talking about?
Go Irish, but let one guy, lose the ball and one guy jumps on it to save it. And then literally everybody that's on the field will dogpile on top of him. That is the best way to explain my thoughts. You have,
and a lot of that is negative, right? You're dogpiling negatively. Yeah.
Yeah. You have one bad thing in your day. You were late to work because of a wreck or a traffic light, or you messed one thing up because you forgot something and you had to go back. It's not the end of the world. But then when you say, I should have known, I should have been able to figure this out, I should have had it ready, I should have done this, I should have done that. And then you dogpile onto it with, and why am I constantly in this funk? Why am I constantly in this bad frame of mind? And then everything just snowballs, dog piles onto it. And you never seem to get out of it. I mean, and I don't know if it's the same friend, or same person on here, but like that one person said, you don't have that much power. It is a big, moment to acknowledge that you don't have the amount of power that you think you really do. And you have to be willing to let go of that, because that's a control issue for me. I had control issues when I lived at the house because I wasn't in control. So after that, I had to try and control every aspect of my daily life. And you can't physically do that. But when you don't control everything that you think you should, that's because you get the negative thought that, well, I should have been able to do this if I'd just done that.
And like Melissa's saying, it's my fault. It's my fault. I should be able to control this.
Yeah, you can't. This is where that expression "let it go" comes in. You have to let that part go.
Exactly, and that's what we've always talked about. On smaller things, the let it go idea is a good thing. Sure, if I get into it with somebody in my family or whatever, maybe let that. But the bigger emotional wound. So Candice, as we close out here, sorry, go ahead, finish that thought.
No. You're exactly right. I mean, you have to be willing and able to let little things go, because it will make your outlook better. It will make it easier to function.
Sure.
For me, I should say, for me, it helped my outlook and became there. There's not so many things that I have to do now. Basically, there's not so many things that I feel like I have to keep up with, because
that perfectionism is coming down, and you're saying more to yourself, more and more. It's okay that I'm not perfect. It's okay that I have these things I'm working on.
Yeah,
beautiful. Exactly. So let's end with that. Let's talk, and then like I said before, we'll get Candice on again, and we'll talk a little bit maybe more specifically about some things. But Candice, so someone is out there either watching it live now or after we upload it, says, "Oh, come on, therapy. I mean, does that really work? I mean, I can't heal. I can't fix these things." Let's close out with that.
I can honestly say that I cannot count how many times, just because of your feedback specifically, that I made connections in my head, whether they be big or small connections. You helped me to make the connection with why the shopping that I do and did, why I needed to do the shopping.
Well, as I remember that night, and I remember exactly where we were, that was, you came up with that one. You came up with the whole
Yeah,
control piece.
right.
Remember? I even remember you looking at it and you were like, wow, okay, now
Yeah.
so, but talk just about why, or how that process of talking things out
Well,
helped you heal.
yeah, I mean, with your feedback and your questions and your guidance, basically, you know, saying, well, why do you do this? Why do you feel this way? Or why do you feel that way? Or the feedback is key. And the questions that you asked me were key. And then for you to reinforce when I made the connections, to reinforce the work that I was doing, to reinforce the it's okay, to reinforce all of the things that once I made the connection, you would remind me of these things that I was doing. Because it's easy to make the connection, but then it's easy to forget the work. It's easy to forget the progress. And so that's the key for me. You know?
Beautiful, beautiful. And we'll have Candice, like I said, back on to talk a little bit more deeply about this. And then I just want to really touch quickly on Brenda's question. How do you control emotions when you feel like you're going 100 miles an hour inside? So Candice, why don't you give a shot at that, and then I'll chime in. How have you learned to control and manage that racing mind, that mind that's just going 100 miles an hour?
You just have to recognize that you are racing.
Mindfulness. Yep. Thinking
Yeah,
about your thinking.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I couldn't think of the expression, but that's exactly what it is. You have to recognize the race, and then you have to think about what your mind is racing about, and why are you fixated on these particular things. And then you just have to, I mean, it sounds so simple, and I mean, it's easy
Takes
for,
a lot of work. It sounds simple to say, hey, let's go climb Mount Everest, right?
right. But you have to think about your thinking. You have to stop and breathe. You have to, I mean, something as simple as taking your phone, something that's flat and solid, and just holding it, and having something solid and grounded in front of you to
Exactly.
concentrate on, to break. You have to break that concentration. You have to
Right.
break that mindset. You have to basically break the trigger. I mean,
And see, now you're getting to exactly what I was going to follow up with Brenda, and Brenda will be our last comment, guys, and we'll follow up later if you want. But you've got to look at what's triggering it, Brenda. Obviously, something is triggering, and what Candice said is you have to look for the themes of what your mind is racing about. And if there are no themes, and if it's just, you've got to then get into like, what am I avoiding thinking about? What are all these bombarding thoughts keeping me away from that? Keeping me away from the main issue? Because what I'm sensing, Brenda, is obviously, there may be something that is causing you to lose control of your emotions. And that has to be dealt with. Okay. So Melissa's asking one more question. How do I turn off my fight or flight response? That's a great question, Melissa. Very deep.
yeah.
What's that?
That's why I made that face when I saw it pop up. I just went, ooh.
Yeah. So Melissa, what I'll leave you with is this, okay? Because I gotta let Candice go. Is that you're not gonna turn it off. Okay, you have to listen to what Candice is talking about when she talks about ebb and flow. You've got to, we live in this polarized society where it's either this or that. I've got to be a liberal or a conservative. I've got to be happy or sad. I've got to be perfect or I'm totally imperfect. Melissa, it's about allowing the fight and flight response to begin to coexist. And I'll go in a little more deeply in that maybe next week. I don't know how many times I'm going to be on because of the holidays and all. I'll be on it at some point. But what I would offer to you, Melissa, is you've got to get into, I don't know if you've done any work on what's causing the fight or flight, but remember, these are deep-seated impulses that we have for a reason. They've helped us evolve to this point. You're not going to turn them off, okay? You got to get rid of the idea of being able to turn it off. Like Candice and I were talking about. Go ahead, Candice. Talk
No,
about a pre-interview about sometimes you feel down, sometimes you
mhm.
feel
Yeah, I mean, there are still, I still have days. I mean,
sure.
and it took me a long time to realize that there is no specific corner you're going to turn. There is no switch that you're going to flip
Mm.
one day and it's going to be like, the heavens opened up and I'm cured. I expected that for years, and you have to know that it's not something that can just be done and then you're done.
Turned off or
Yeah.
on, you know?
Yeah.
Well, and so she's saying, so it's just, oh, it's okay to just exist. Well, in a sense, but what you're allowing to exist, Melissa, is the negative feelings, are the negative feelings. You
Mhm.
have to, because the more you set it up as I got to get rid of these negative feelings, the more, look at what I'm doing, the more conflict you're going to have within you. So what needs to exist, Melissa, is how you're feeling, the trauma, whatever you're still being affected of from the past on. You've got to allow that to exist in you, and then you have to work on it. I'm not saying just let it exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
The letting it exist, Melissa, is the first part of working on it, because a lot of times people don't want to even admit that it does exist, because we have that we have that type of culture where it's eliminate the negative.
There
Don't
is balance. Balance is attainable. Balance is achievable, but you have to do the work. I mean, the process is there, and depending on your situation, the process may be longer than what you like, but the process is, uh, the end. The end is achievable as far as
exactly.
balance and tools and things like that. Just
Sure.
so that it works.
And Fernando is saying, acknowledge that you have negative thoughts. Absolutely. We all do. Make it okay, but work on them. So Melissa, without sort of, obviously we're not going to solve whatever you're going through right now, but how
Mhm.
do I manage it better? By not hating it. Whatever
Exactly.
the it is. I did a show a few weeks ago about it. Remember it? That it we know all we don't like to admit it. We don't like to admit is still affecting us. You've got to say to yourself tonight, Melissa, if you want to manage it better in the beginning, it's okay that it needs to be managed. It's
Negative
okay.
thoughts, negative things, negative thoughts, trauma, fallout from trauma does not make you a bad person, does not
Exactly.
make you bad, does not make you at fault.
Doesn't
Um,
have to define you, like Fernando's saying.
exactly. You don't have to be that person. You know, you can be and do whatever you are willing to acknowledge and achieve. And how do you get your power back?
Yeah, I know, right? We're just and guys, I'm gonna have to, because it's getting late on the East Coast. Why
Uh,
don't we do this?
yeah.
We'll have Candice back on
Mhm.
after the holidays, maybe into the first or second week of December. But Brenda, you're asking great questions. They're very deep questions that aren't easily answered. You just real quick, how do you get your power back? By first being okay that you don't have it, by
You have
not hating yourself that you don't have power, by trying to figure out, where did I lose my power?
mhm.
That's the beginning of it. None of this is a quick fix.
You have to
Candice,
figure out what makes you feel powerless.
exactly.
Yes. You
You
have
have to
to.
figure out what is making you
Yeah.
feel powerless. You have to say, it's okay that I feel powerless, but I got to
Mhm.
work on that. I have to work on that. That's called active acceptance. I
Mhm.
accept it and I work on it. Passive acceptance is, I accept it and nothing happens.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah. No, that I had a hard time with the difference in those two, and active and passive acceptance. And once you begin to actively accept things and realize that once you accept it, it doesn't, not only does it not define you, it doesn't change you.
And it doesn't have to control you.
Exactly. The only thing that changes you is yourself,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
that's when you begin to take your power back. When you learn that you are the change and not outside forces.
Gandhi said it best, be the change you want to see in the world.
Oh yeah. Or
And Michael Jackson, let's get a little Michael Jackson, be the man in the mirror. So, okay. And Melissa's closing out and saying, normally I think them through all the way, but they shut me down for long periods of time. Melissa, it's okay that it shuts you down. You got to get into what's shutting you down. You
yeah.
got to make that you're getting shut down. Okay. You can't hate yourself for being shut down, but you got to work on it.
When you're shut down, when you begin the shutdown, for me, I call them spirals. That's when you should begin to really think and try to process things, because even though you may spiral,
And be compassionate with yourself.
yeah,
Even though you may spiral, go ahead.
Yeah, be honest with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the best things you can ever do. And when the spirals or the shutdowns begin, try to begin processing what is causing it. A lot of times I would blame myself for the spirals. I would blame myself for the periods of depression. And that, like I said before, it's just a dog pile, So just be willing to acknowledge that it's okay. This isn't going to kill you. It's not going to break you. No matter how much you think it will not. You are stronger than what you think.
And people may hear Candice say that and say, oh, well, that's easier said than done. Trust me, people, Candice did not have that optimistic outlook. Candice was consumed by the pessimism, the negativity that was being pumped out of those emotional wounds. Mm-hmm. So great, Candice. Well, thank you. We'll get you back on early part of December.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing your story. We had great viewer feedback tonight. So this is exactly why I'm doing this. So thank you.
Yes.
And any closing thoughts?
Just remember, it's okay. It's okay, good or bad, it's okay. And the sooner that you accept that it's okay, the better it will help you to cope.
Exactly. It's okay because I'm working on it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, Candice, get some rest. Thank you for your and I'll text you and we'll figure out a time in December to get some more
and
great feedback from you.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for your feedback and for your questions. I mean, this was great. This helps me too. So thank you all.
Great. Okay, Candice, get some rest and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Take it easy. Thanks. Bye-bye. Okay, guys. Thank you for everyone for your comments. No, you're not keeping her. She's more than happy. Thanks, Melissa, for the empathy though. Will it negatively affect my kids, Melissa? It depends what's coming out to them. It depends how much they're aware of what mommy has been through. So what I would recommend to you is, Melissa, you've got to work on whatever is still affecting you. You got to make it okay and work on it. So, all right, everybody, thank you for logging on. Please share this if you haven't already. Please remember that whatever emotional wounds you're feeling, it's okay. You got to work on them. And I'll see you guys on, I think I'll probably be on Monday. Don't know about Wednesday and probably not Friday, but we'll figure it out. Okay. All right, guys. Talk to you soon. Take care.